It has been 2 months since I opened my RV park called Pierced Oak, which was a 3-year project for me. So like I promised, here is an update. To give you a breakdown on the video, I'm going to first give you an update on the park, then I'm going to cover your common questions such as cost and hiccups and my advice if you want to start your own. First, let's do the fun part. Let me show it off. This is an aerial of what the park looked like the last time you saw it. This was a month prior to me actually opening, and 3 big changes have happened since. Of course, the roads going in made a huge visual impact. There were a few different routes for roading options. You can go with some sort of base, like a crushed granite or a washed rock, but I upgraded to an asphalt option. After the roads were in, I really hated only having caliche in between every site. I didn't only dislike the look, but I also hated the function of anytime it rained, it would get muddy and soupy. So I decided to add mulch to all of this. It not only added another drastic visual difference, but also will prevent campers from having muddy mess right outside their door whenever it rains. Then of course, me loving the trees, it also comes with the benefit of retaining a bunch of moisture around the roots of every single tree. Now, I already know most of you will ask, why not grass? And in my area, grass is not only very time consuming and expensive to start, but also the long-term maintenance of it is just not feasible for my park since I'm on a well and I am not approved to have an irrigation system. Another big change that's happened is the shade canopies I added. These go 8 feet into the ground and are 40 feet long. I started with 13 to make sure that people would actually want these, and if they do, then I can always add more. By the way, this is a Texas-based company that I cannot recommend highly enough. It's kind of hard to impress me, and this company gets full marks. If you need shade for residential or commercial, definitely reach out to them. Going back to grass for a second, the dog park, which has been a massive hit since I opened, has really filled in nicely. The process is interesting for how they plant it. After spreading the top layer to cover up all the septic lines, they cover it with sandy loam, spreading it to create a track for themselves to spread more and not damage any of the lines they just laid. Then, to ensure that it sticks and doesn't run off with the first rain, they roll out a decomposable netting that has grass seed embedded in it. They make sure to germinate the seeds prior to laying it down so that once it makes contact with the soil, it'll start the growing process. This means the dog park and the communal area where the fire pit is lush with grass and it's beautiful. Around the park, I was able to place tons of seating options that I talked about last time. Cozy picnic tables are placed all around. A porch swing is hung on the frame I made years ago. A new 4-person booth has been a huge hit with guests. A glider on the back porch, and the newest addition is the dog washing station where guests can give their dogs a bath. Giving you guys an update on the inside of the spaces, the laundry room got 4 washers and dryers installed, and I added in a folding counter all along this back wall. I do have room for 2 more sets, but I'm starting with 4 to make sure the space will be utilized before I invest more. The public restrooms and showers were easy enough to finish out, and I did make some custom signs at the woodshed for the doors. Going into the communal room and camp store, the last you saw I was making headway, but we still had a lot to do. Right now we're setting up for a Cinco de Mayo party. We have lots of seating for those who want to catch a game or show together, but then we can clear out this area to throw a big potluck or game night as well. Going into the back is where we have the office for check-ins or questions, then even a small camp store with some general items that wouldn't be convenient to run out of. All in all, I am really in love with how it turned out, and I'm getting great feedback from those who have stayed here already. Okay, now that I've given you an update on the park, let me go ahead and answer some very common questions. The first one being, why an RV park? Truly, this began very organically for me. When I bought my parents' place closer to me, they then gifted me the land they were living on in exchange. So then I found myself with a piece of land and then looking into what could I turn it into that could be a good investment. And in my specific area, the two major standouts is an RV park or self-storage facility. I will say that the storage facility would have been not only cheaper to start up, but much easier to maintain in the long run. However, with this being my family's land, my grandparents before my parents and now mine, I made the decision to go with the route that would be filled with life. I love the idea of thinking about dogs running around and people sitting around fire pits and people going on morning walks and saying hello to their neighbors. So that's how I landed on an RV park. Another factor to consider is that in my specific unique area of Texas, it is a big draw for winter Texans, snowbirds that come in from the north to enjoy our very mild winter, and they're here for months long. Then whenever they leave, summer hits, and then we get another wave of a different sort of tourism, which is the people here temporarily to enjoy the lakes and the rivers. So RV parks in my area already have a history of doing well. Of course, everybody wants to know about cost, and this one's really tricky because there's so many factors that go into it, and it's gonna differ from region to region, even if you're in Texas. So something to start with is a really rough estimate is you can kind of count on $30,000 to $40,000 per slip. Now there were areas where I was able to massively save, such as inheriting the land or already having a well drilled and available for me to use. I was already starting with the buildings that then turned into the camp store and the restrooms. But then there were other areas that were a massive expense that you probably won't have, such as I live on solid rock, so the trenching was incredibly expensive since it was a giant rock saw. This is going to be dramatically higher than if you live in an area with just dirt and tree roots in the way. Yes, I did already have the well, but since I had a well and I'm not going with public water, that means that I not only go through a very long permitting process, but also all of the cost for producing the water, testing the water, all of that then falls to me instead of it just being outsourced to whoever you pay for your public water. To paint a picture for you, if I were in an area where I could have tied into a public water line instead of creating my own water source to supply for people, I would have saved a year and a half on timeline and then roughly $280,000 to $300,000 in cost. Another huge expense since I live in the country is I don't have a public sewer line that I can tie into, so therefore I needed to install a septic system. The septic not only cost $270,000, but it also took up an entire acre of land that could have otherwise been used for slips or other amenities. All that to say that if you have public water and sewer available in your area, then you can expect to not only save on the cost, but the timeline of setting up those utilities. Because then you can just trench, pipe, and you have utilities. And the best part of that is then they maintain it. Another huge expense that could be reduced for you is internet. However, unlike sewer and water, this was my personal choice of an area that I wanted to invest more into. The cheapest way to get internet at the park is to put a big bubble over it. You place poles, you place the equipment that emits a signal, and eventually you have like a big mesh system over the entire park that people can then reach up and tie into wirelessly. However, the downside to this is RVs are known for interfering with the signal. Also, once the park gets more filled, if everybody's doing email, not a problem, but if everybody is streaming, big problem. Now, I look at internet as a necessity and not an amenity. So I not only got the bubble systems that I can offer for free, but then I also chose to route high-speed fiber to every single site to allow the guests the option of plug-in internet as well. This cost an additional $105,000 to install. So know that if it's not important to you or your guests, then this could be wiped off the expense sheet as well. Now, I think the only other expense that wasn't a requirement that I chose to do was the shade canopies. These were around $140,000, which is a big expense. But again, it gives me an additional revenue on the books since I can charge more for the sites that have them. Now, I didn't go into this blindly. I did some research with other RV parks that have shade canopies and asked them about the interest that people already have. So I have a feeling, especially being in Texas, that these will be highly sought after, but I'll follow up in about a year with some data and let you guys know. Then let's see, going back to the question, I covered the topic of cost, but then he's curious about bidding and also hiccups. I'll start with my GC was amazing. I found somebody local that had a huge network of reliable trades that he could pull in at every single step. However, something that I loved that he did was he still went and got at least three bids on every single step just to make sure that I was getting the best price. This is probably obvious, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it. A GC on a project like this will be the make or break. I will warn you that if you're gonna tackle something on this scale, it is not for the lighthearted. It will not go smooth, it will not go according to plan. At this point, I have a reputation for tackling incredibly hard things, and I think this was the hardest thing I've done. My GC was impeccable at coordinating and highly money conscious, but it's just unavoidable with a project of this scale that you're gonna have pop-ups that will affect time and money. So you're gonna need to be able to adjust and pivot. So definitely put time into finding the right GC for you. I would recommend local, has a good network already of skilled workers, and definitely has done a project similar to the one you're asking him to do, or her. Okay, moving on to a few other questions. Questions asked if I'm worried about having so much competition with RV parks already in my area. Truthfully, no, I'm really not. The RV park industry is only I think tripled since COVID. And I think with living expenses going up, everything indicates that RV life is just going to be on the incline. No park in my area is struggling to fill up, and we have tons of different calibers here. Then as for what I plan to set my park apart, I kind of have an advantage here, I think, with being a carpenter. I am able to add unique features on a whim, like the dog washing station I just finished, or the porch to the showers. It gives me a huge advantage, I think, as I'll be able to personalize every nook and cranny eventually. On my to-build list is cornhole sets and horseshoe pits, an archery range, raised garden beds, a picnic table at every single site, and since I can weld too, eventually a fire pit with a flip-over grill option for every site. I also think management is a huge part of it. I have been incredibly choosy about the management here to make sure it's the right fit for that friendly community building vibe I really want to see at my park. This guy was surprised that I didn't build tiny homes. It was intentional. At the very beginning, I actually considered doing nothing but tiny homes since I'm a carpenter. However, if you think about RVs and tiny homes, both of those routes require the exact same infrastructure, all the same utilities. You build the pad. With the RV park route, you get to stop there. With the tiny house route, you have to keep building and investing money. Then, with the RV route, they bring their home with them. This means that I don't have to worry if their dog pees on the carpet, if they break a window, if their AC unexpectedly goes out. But with the tiny house route, all of that responsibility is on me, not only in the short run, but also in the long run. So while you can charge more for tiny homes, I opted for the route that would still be a good investment, but to me, less stress. I got a lot of this. Tent camping. No for tents in the park. I'm actually a huge tent camper, but for my park, I just maxed out all of the space available for as many slips as I could. However, I do offer slips for short term as well as long term, and then any style of RVs. And then for my biggest struggle since opening, it's truly getting the word out that I'm open and that I'm here. I think it's already a really hard obstacle when opening a new business, but then you add on top of it that I opened in this really weird month, March. I've missed all of the winter Texans who have already traveled back north, and then I'm not yet in time for the summer tourists, which will start in roughly about another month. So right now, I'm just focused on making sure everybody who comes into the park has a really great experience in order to get that good word of mouth going, because everybody tells me RVers are a community and it will get around. Okay, and I think that answers all of the, at least the most commonly asked questions. So I'll go ahead and wrap up with my final thoughts on RV park and if you should do one or my advice on one. I do think it is a marvelous investment. I will tell you though that I'm very happy to finally be on the operating end and not the building and developing end. I would say that if you're interested in owning an RV park, personally, I would look at buying one first instead of building one from scratch. Unless you're in a unique situation like me where I already had the land, I would absolutely skip all of the hassle and heartache and timeline of building one from scratch. I would buy one that already exists that you just have to either fix up or immediately take over and start running. I will say that there are lots of people out there that talk about buying RV parks in places that aren't even close to them, out of city, out of state. And I will just say and caution you, for my 2 cents, take it for what it's worth, I now have 4 businesses, and there are plenty of hard things that comes with owning your own business. By far the hardest is finding reliable people. I think it's hard enough with all of my businesses being incredibly local to me, to where I can pop in or even step in should I need to. I personally would not buy or start a business that wasn't within, I would say, an hour's range. I don't know what other people's tricks are, but that's just my advice that you can put into the bucket if you're considering starting your own. I hope that all of this information helps you out if you're thinking about starting your own. And of course, stay tuned for more updates. I have plenty of things that I'm gonna be building out there, and of course, I'll be making videos on it. So I'll see you then.